Who doesn't love a good sequel? The Empire Strikes Back, Yakuza Kiwami 2, Jaws 3: The Revenge.
Smile, you son of a bitch!
Oof. Sometimes multiple entries are needed to complete a story. Other times, they're just cash grabs. This was partially the case in 2016 when it was announced that the iconic alternative idol group BiS was reforming. What ensued was a lot. So strap in, because we're about to ride the roller coaster that is the story of Brand New Idol Society's second generation. I just want to say that I did make a video on BiS first generation, and if you want an understanding of what the group was about, its members, and the impact they had on Japanese idol culture, then it's worth checking out. It's not required watching for this video, but it is helpful and interesting story, and I worked really hard on it, so do me a solid? Right, so now that my shameless plug's out of the way, let's get the ball rolling. BiS Reformation began to take shape on July 8th, 2014. The day the first generation disbanded. Every member was going their separate ways, all of which were announced at Yokohama Arena. However, we're going to shift our focus to a key behind-the-scenes figure. A fella by the name of Jinosuke Watanabe. If you watched my previous video on BiS, then that name may sound vaguely familiar, as it was Mr. Watanabe beneath the hood of DIS' very own Jinosuke. But outside of starting unprovoked hip-hop beef, who is he? He's someone who abandoned a potential career in political economics in favor of following his passion, music. This passion, along with his previous experience in a band, landed him a producing gig at indie label Tsubasa Records. It was there in 2009 that he met a face you and I both know and love, to varying degrees. Poor Louie. Not only was he tasked with producing her music, he was also acting as her manager, and therefore became BiS manager by proxy. When they called it quits in 2014, he left Tsubasa to manage Predecessors. But he knew he couldn't manage the duo alone, and in order to do so, he started his own production company called Watanabe Artistic Creative Kabushiki Gaisha, or Corporation, better known as WAK. The company's first signees were, of course, Predecessors and Watanabe's own band, This Is Not a Business. They also had a hand in producing Billy Idol early on, so by late 2014, the company started to develop a strong lineup. But they were still missing something that would make them serious contenders in the world of Idol. Something new, fresh, and most importantly, original. That brings us to early 2015, when Watanabe announced that he'd be restarting BiS, a surefire way to hype fans up. But the group wasn't getting back together. No, instead a successor group was being formed, and auditions for this group opened immediately. March 9th saw the members of BiS, or Brand New Idol Shit, revealed to the world. They followed a path similar to their predecessors, releasing their first digital single on the 25th and their self-titled debut album 2 months later. The group was wildly popular almost immediately, most likely due to their image heavily relying on BiS' initial anti-idol approach. Their first one-man show was even called This Is for BiS, which goes to show just how much of their early success depended on poor Louie's group. Things would only go up from there though, as they released their first official single in September, and then followed that up by beginning work on their next album. Their second record was slated for release on January 20th, 2016, one day after their Idol is Shit tour was set to end. But on the tour's final date, They revealed that they signed with Avex Trax and would be making their major debut in May. BiS had made it, and the fans, the BiS staff, and Watanabe were all overjoyed with the announcement. But not everyone shared in the joy. Namely, poor Louie. She was jealous that what she saw as a tribute group had found overnight success by basically copying the image she pioneered. On top of that, while every other former BiS member was either finding personal happiness or professional success, her post-BiS project, Louie Frontic Akabane Japan, was floundering. And to make matters worse, that group's former guitarist, Kenta Matsukuma, was acting as BiS's sound manager, so poor Louie's feelings were understandable. She was the only established name when BiS formed, yet after their disbandment, she was the only one struggling to find her feet. It was this jealousy and most likely desperation that pushed her to approach Watanabe and Matsukuma with a proposition. What if BiS were to reform? Seeing the hype and, let's be honest, dollar signs around the idea, of course they were behind it. I mean, what reason did they have to say no? It could only benefit WAK, as fans would go ballistic upon hearing that BiS was reforming. And by 2016, it's not exactly like the company had anything to lose either. Jealousy and greed met on that day, and they put in motion the plans to revive the genre-defying, anti-idol unit that sent shockwaves throughout idol culture years prior. And the fruition of those plans are where our story begins. The big announcement was made on July 8th, 2016, the 2-year anniversary of BiS' initial disbandment. Audition applications started being accepted the same day, and to commemorate the occasion, poor Louie released BiS BiS. Oddly enough, the song is credited as a BiS track despite only featuring her and being released before the auditions even took place. It's also worth noting that every former member received an invitation to audition, though none of them accepted the offer. Wonder why? Of all the applicants, only 11, and poor Louie, were selected to audition for the group. Now, something to note about WAK auditions is that they're treated like a game show. They're all live streamed on the video sharing site Nico Nico, so on top of dance rehearsals, singing tests, and one-on-one interviews, auditionees take part in challenges that are seemingly done solely for entertainment value, like daily marathons, trivia games, cook-offs, and more, which do affect their audition ranks, by the way. The Reformation audition lasted for a total of 4 days, from September 1st to the 4th, and every fiber of every hopeful idol's being was put to the test. They sang their hearts out, danced profusely, endured one-on-one interviews with Watanabe, ran marathons, uncomfortably posed in swimsuits, not weird. Some had their food spiked with hot sauce. Poor Louie's underwear was revealed to the world as she slept. What? But only those who prevailed through it all were chosen to join BiS. At 8 p.m. on September 4th, fans were greeted to BiS' founding lineup. Since none of the auditionees, aside from poor Louie, were officially idols, none of them had stage names, and therefore they all auditioned under pseudonyms. Some of these pseudonyms may sound vaguely familiar, and I want you to remember that they were named by the CEO of an artistic, creative corporation. The founding members of BiS second generation were Hina Yokohama, who became Godzilla, Megumu Koshoju, who became Aya 8 Prince, Maina the End, who became Kika Fronttail, and of course, poor Louie. Yukiko Nagayama was also selected to join BiS on the condition that she finished a bowl of ghost pepper curry she'd been struggling with since lunch. Through sheer willpower and determination, and proving that she's stronger than I, she finished the curry and was welcomed into the group as Peri Ubu. Unfortunately, the remaining competitors didn't make the cut, but they wouldn't have their idol dreams totally shattered. Each of them received offers to join a sister group of BiS called Shimizu Idol Society, or SIS. Most of them accepted the offer, but the group would disband one day after their debut performance. The reason for the sudden breakup was because of, quote, misbehavior by their manager, leaving more questions than answers. Most of the members would join Gang Parade under new stage names, and the short-lived project would be the subject of the 2017 documentary Who Killed Idol? Sis Shometsu no Uta. Getting back to the favorite sibling, immediately after their reformation, BiS began rehearsing for their debut show, which was live-streamed the same night. Following that, they hit the pavement and began performing small live shows with set lists of first-generation hits as a way to reintroduce fans to the group and give the new members some experience. However, on October 17th, they begin throwing some original songs into the mix. And these original songs would make their way onto their debut album. Brand New Idol Society 2 was released on November 16th, 2016, and while the record mostly consists of original BiS hits like My Lie, Primal, and Idol, it does include 4 brand new songs such as Happy Birthday and Change the World. And these new songs couldn't be any further from the first generation style. While the music of the first lineup was heavy and in your face, the original brand new BiS tracks took on a lighter, more pop rock feel. This told fans from the beginning that this BiS would be different from what they'd grown to love. Luckily, the fans seemed to take to it, though I'm sure they were just happy to receive any new BiS whatsoever. Regardless, the group continued performing live shows to promote the album until late December, when they'd shift gears and start focusing on their next album, Stupid. These promo shows continued into early 2017, which brings us to late January, when things start to get rocky. So, Stupid was slated for release on February 22nd, and as that date fast approached, Watanabe had the first of his ingenious ideas. He announced that for the week of January 21st, every member would be forced to live out of a car and only permitted to eat rice. Coupled with the fact that the entire week was booked with talk show appearances, meet and greets, and live shows, calling it extreme might be an understatement. And to top it off, they'd also be running a 100-kilometer marathon on the 28th. To stretch the old legs out, of course. Predictably, fans did not take too well to the announcement at all. This was different than prancing around naked through a haunted forest or doing a 180 on their image. This stunt was genuinely dangerous, and concerns about their well-beings were brought up. But Watanabe is a man of his word, something we'll see more of later, and the stunt went on in spite of these justified worries. Some of it was even recorded for use in the Gives music video, where we can see everyone making and eating rice and doing their laundry at a laundromat. Thankfully, the week ended without incident, but they still had one final hurdle to jump: the 100-kilometer marathon. The entire thing was live streamed, and along with fans showing their support on social media and in person, some viewers provided regular progress updates on Twitter. Updates came in pretty regularly, with everything from checkpoints to bathroom breaks being tweeted about. Someone even posted that Perry Ubu suffered a menstrual attack, which any good doctor will tell you is a medical term. Now, they were mere weeks away from Stupid's release, and since the stunt put BiS' name in everyone's mouth, Watanabe decided that they'd repeat it in February, this time only allowing them to eat salad. But this go-around would be different. He understood everyone's initial outrage, and of course considered the well-beings of his talent. Looking deep within himself, he made some changes to the challenge, with their well-being in mind. He let them eat some animal products for protein. On the topic of health, it's around this time that Kika starts wearing all-white face paint. This style of makeup is known as shironori and is worn by traditional kabuki and geisha performers to accent the lips and eyes. But in Kika's case, she did it to cover all that stuff up. Some of the BiS staff, Watanabe included, apparently made fun of her looks, so she started donning the paint solely because of that. I mean, does this guy really have a place to make fun of anybody? So the Karsten is held once more with added safety precautions, and the end of the week is capped off with an announcement. WAK would be holding another audition at the end of March. The 5-day camp took place from March 28th to April 2nd, with the goal of adding new members to every group under contract. Auditionees looked to shine as they sang, danced, and of course, ran marathons. Every audition camp ends with a WAK exhibition, which is basically a mini festival where every group performs and the new signees are announced. And on April 2nd, 2 new faces would join BiS, Hirano Nozomu, who became Momoland, and Megumi Oshoji, who became Pan Luna Leafy. Really flexing the creative muscles with those pseudonyms, huh, Janosuke? But BiS wouldn't just get 2 new members that day. No, see, Watanabe announced that a trade would be held. Aya 8 Prince would be traded to Gang Parade in exchange for a familiar face joining BiS. Saki Kamiya. Both of them and their respective groups were clearly unhappy about the trade, and while I'm sure it was done to benefit BiS, controversy, nostalgia, and whatnot, there's another potential motive that we'll explore later on down the line. Just keep Aya's trade to Gang Parade in the back of your mind because it is important. The group's first official single and the debut track of the new members, Socialism, was released on May 31st. Unfortunately, the track would eventually be overshadowed by controversy. Sometime in spring, it was announced that Poor Louie would be participating in a challenge. Now, said challenge has often been described more as a publicity stunt, and it definitely drummed up tons of publicity for both BiS and WAK. Just not the good kind. I know it's said, there's no such thing as bad publicity, but really, what good can come from anything called diet or die?
2017年10月6日赤坂ブリッツBiSは死にません
So what is diet or die? Even though its name sounds like something from Metalocalypse, it's actually not all that brutal. Watanabe challenges one of his idols to lose weight by a specific date. If they succeed, then yay, they've lost some weight. If they fail, they face some sort of punishment, which isn't usually anything drastic. Before 2017, only 2 BiS members had participated in the challenge. The first was successfully completed by Hugme in 2015, while the second was failed by Sent Chihiro Chidi. For failing her challenge, she was temporarily demoted as BiS's captain. If Hugme failed her challenge, she would have had to watch her cat eat her favorite food, beef tongue. So it's not like there was anything major on the line here. Just some lighthearted body-shaming fun. Poor Louie's challenge was different from the other ones though. For starters, she was only challenged as part of a brand deal with the Rizap gym franchise. It's not selling out, it's good business. Because of that deal, her challenge was an extended version, lasting from January to September. Finally, her progress would take the form of a docu-series, with episodes being uploaded to YouTube once every few months, as opposed to making regular progress updates on Twitter and being weighed on stage like previous participants. The series totaled 5 videos, with the first one documenting her counseling session. In it, they basically weigh her, measure her total body fat, talk about the cost of the training, which Watanabe makes sure we all know is expensive. Talk about the plans they offer, and start her towards her weight loss goal. Watanabe also states that if Poor Louie fails or quits the challenge, that her punishment will be reimbursing him for the 300,000 yen, or about $290 training. Also, he uses some pretty harsh language to talk about her and her weight, which is,
すごっ初めて見た
人間じゃないみたいなチャーシューだもんね
そうやばいんですよでも長袖でも
チャーシューちぎりパンみたいな豚なのでライトアップで
Believe it or not, this does come up again later. The second episode just documents the beginning of her training, but the third episode is where things start to go wrong. She reveals that she's gained rebound weight, which is basically her body trying to get back into its comfort zone, and it's completely out of her control. We're also shown clips of her being teased with and foregoing food, which also comes up again later. At the end of the 4th episode, we're left with a cliffhanger. As expected, poor Louie's fate is set to a live rendition of Change the World. Now, even though she'd only gained about 6 pounds of rebound weight, Watanabe was enraged by this. So much so that he said she'd be suspended from all upcoming BiS activities if she didn't lose it. While that alone is cruel, the fact that they had an important one-man show coming up in October took the stakes even higher. I know they say fear is the best motivator, but this was drastic, especially over just 6 pounds. But poor Louie wasn't about to cave under the pressure, and she continued pushing herself to reach her 42 kilogram weight goal, maintaining her diet, hitting the gym, and even exercising at home. And in the 5th episode, her fate was revealed to the world. She stepped on a scale and it read 44.6 kilograms. It was close, but close isn't good enough for Watanabe, who announced her suspension from BiS in the video and on the group's website. Fans were outraged that she was suspended over something so ridiculous. But they were even more pissed that her reaction to the news was included in the 5th episode. Upon learning the news of her suspension, she fell to the ground, tears in her eyes. She put her face in her hands and began apologizing to the fans for letting them down. Of course, she was devastated. This was the first time BiS was performing without her, and she'd be missing a show they definitely need her at. Disdain was expressed in the form of dislikes, which there were a lot of, and some even voiced concerns about her well-being in the comments, as this situation rang an eerily familiar chord. Memorial Clover Z's Reni Takagi failed an onstage weigh-in in front of 150 fans and began appearing thinner and thinner in the coming months, leading some to believe that she developed an eating disorder as a result of the event. And BiS fans worried something similar might be happening with poor Louie. Along with her foregoing food in episode 3, she references eating disorders in the lyrics for Not the End, so there was reason to worry. Even with raging waves of backlash and criticism surrounding him, Watanabe remained a pillar, defending his decision on Twitter. He wrote, "If I didn't keep my promise, what would happen? Think about it. I gave her time. That's all." The outrage further intensified when he denied fans refunds for the upcoming one-man in October, citing that BiS would still be appearing in some form. A week later, fans were still pissed and Watanabe was drinking in all the free criticism fan sites and blogs were giving him. And then mainstream media caught wind of the story. On September 21st, HuffPost Japan posted a write-up on the challenge in which they criticized idol body standards and his harsh language towards poor Louie. And with the HuffPost article came tons of scathing professional criticism, as experts weighed in and said that Diet or Diet Self promoted eating disorders. They cited poor Louie's starting weight of 51.5 kilograms, or about 113 pounds, as already dangerously low, and criticized the harsh punishment she faced, and of course, his language towards her. By this point, the heat had become too much for old Watanabe to take, and all 5 videos were removed from BiS YouTube channel, though a fan was able to save and re-upload the first 4 with English subtitles. Unfortunately, or maybe not, the 5th video seems to have been completely removed from the internet, leaving us with only this haunting image of the BiS captain reacting to the news of her suspension. After the videos were removed, Watanabe and poor Louie released a collaborative track called Best Friend, which could only be streamed by completing some kind of puzzle. In it, they apologized to the fans for taking advantage of them and thanked the HuffPost for spreading BiS' name. He even apologized on Twitter the same day the article was released. Now that the videos were removed and Watanabe and poor Louie seemingly made up, everything was water under the bridge, right? Wrong. Her suspension still stood, and it remained all the way through October 6th, the date of their crucial one-man, Idol is Dead, at Akasaka Blitz. The show opened normally, with BiS performing their newer hits featuring a recording of poor Louie being played in her absence. But about 16 minutes in, they start to perform Paprika, and Saki calls for poor Louie to join them on stage as all 6 ladies squat in protest to her suspension. This stunt is repeated once more, and about halfway through the second performance, poor Louie joins them on stage. It's repeated 3 more times before Watanabe marches out on stage to confront Saki. She begs him to lift poor Louie's suspension, and some of the other groupmates follow suit, leading Watanabe to just kinda say, okay, sure, before waltzing off stage. At least he learned to read the room. To celebrate poor Louie's reinstatement, they play their newest single, I Can't Say No, live for the very first time. However, towards the end of the show, Watanabe once again marches on stage with an announcement. I Can't Say No would serve as BiS' final indie single, because the group had signed with Crown Stones, a subsidiary of the Nippon Crown record label. In that moment, BiS had once again made it. Watanabe's stunts had attracted eyes to them, but their charisma and music established their fan base. If you ask me, these 7 women had superstar written all over them. And while the path to superstardom isn't easy, a major debut is a strong foot forward. All they had to do after that was stick the landing. Which was easier said than done.
せーの。
新生アイドル研究会 BiS です。よろしくお願いします。
I Can't Say No was released on October 4th and features a familiar B-side, a re-recording of Fly. Now the single was originally supposed to come out on August 16th, but was pushed back due to Perry Ubu falling ill. As a result of this, the Aya and Saki trade was indefinitely extended. To be honest, it doesn't look like there was a planned end date in sight, but just hold on to that because I'm telling you, it will be relevant later. I Can't Say No would be the final BiS release of 2017, with the last 2 months being filled by the WAK general election. Announced on November 13th, fans who purchased a copy of WAK and Scramble's works, which was basically an album where random WAK idols came together to cover each other's songs, received a code to vote for their favorite WAK signee. Gotta push them CDs, baby. Voting was held from December 6th to the 30th, and the idols who came in first and second place would get to release their own solo single in 2018. The results were announced in early 2018, and for the record, out of 15, Perry Ubu came in 13th, Saki Kamiya in 10th, Kika Frontail in 9th, Aya 8 Prince in 6th, and Poor Louie in 4th. It's also worth mentioning that Poor Louie was beaten out by 3 BiS members, and I'd imagine she handled the news well. Anyways, in the midst of the election, BiS were performing live shows to promote their major debut single, Whole Lotta Love. With that on the horizon, everything seemed to be going their way. And then January 6th rolled around. They were performing at Heavy 60 in Tokyo, and an unimaginable announcement was made that would rock the venue and put their future into question. Poor Louie stepped forward, mic in hand, and announced her intention to graduate from BiS. She stated that because they received a major label deal, they no longer needed her, and she no longer needed them. She told the audience that her final show with BiS would be March 4th at Ryogoku Kokugikan Sumo Hall. This is honestly the first time I can ever say I've heard complete silence from a BiS crowd. Like, you could hear a fly buzzing, that's how stunned the audience was.
どうなってもBiSが好きだっていうことが時間がかかってしまったんですけど、分かったので、私はBiSを卒業します。
Theories about why Poor Louie made this decision have ranged from her simply getting bored with the group to a desire to join Billy Idol, though she's never revealed the reason why. It could have something to do with Watanabe being more openly involved with BiS as opposed to running things from behind the scenes. Before, it seemed like they pulled off all these insane stunts for shock value, but now they did them at the behest of their manager. Of course, it could be argued that his vast mistreatment of them up to this point was also a deciding factor. Or was it? Everyone, get your tinfoil hats out because it's conspiracy time. The debate about whether or not her diet or die, and in turn her suspension, were staged has raged on since she announced she'd be graduating. There's plenty of evidence to both support and deny its authenticity, like the convenient timing of it all, or the fact that he never admitted it was staged despite all the criticism. Personally, I think it was staged, but not from the beginning. I think it was more of a last-minute adjustment for BiS to test the waters without her. Though I'm curious about what you think. Let me know in the comments below and let's have a little discussion about this whole conspiracy theory. Even in the face of uncertainty following this surreal announcement, BiS continued to press onwards. Throughout January and well into February, they continued promoting their major debut with live shows. These shows would lead into the release of the music video for Whole Lotta Love on February 20th. And this song bears significance in a lot of ways. First and foremost, it was with this video that BiS unofficially welcomed back Aya 8 Prince. Secondly, this was the first song in BiS history to not feature any of the original lineup's members. Poor Louie, of course, was on her way to graduation, and Saki Kamiya had been unofficially traded back to Gang Parade. Finally, this track was the second generation's heaviest to date, something that wouldn't sound out of place in the original BiS catalog. In a way, Whole Lotta Love served as a statement to the fans. It was BiS' way of telling them that even though they were moving forward without their leader, they'd be able to hold their own. Sure, the sound was similar, but it wasn't the same. It was distinctly theirs. This release was the dawn of a new era in brand new Idol Society's history. A new era that would officially begin on March 4th with their Ryogoku, Kokugikan show, and Poor Louie's graduation. The setlist was 20 songs long, and BiS mostly performed songs she'd written lyrics for, as well as some of their original hits. This concert wasn't just Poor Louie's farewell though, as a ceremony held at the show's end officially returned Aya and Saki to their respective groups. However, once Watanabe joined everyone on stage and they all took one final bow, Poor Louie had officially graduated as the captain of the revolutionary idol group, Brand New Idol Society. Her idol group. 3 days later, their major debut single would officially drop, and whereas Whole Lotta Love served as the dawn of the brand new BiS, the single's B-side, Die Promise, served as the original group's sunset. The song would be the last one in BiS history to feature both Poor Louie and Saki Kamiya. And even though all 7 members sang on the track, it was dedicated to Poor Louie, which was made even more evident by its music video. Die Promise's video consists solely of footage of Poor Louie from her time as a solo artist all the way to her time with BiS Second, and even includes some shots that were literally copied from Fly's music video. Again, Watanabe Artistic Creative Corporation. In spite of that, I'm not ashamed to admit that I teared up a little at the end of the video. So by this point, everyone, maybe even the ladies themselves, were wondering what comes next for BiS. They were fresh off of their major debut, meaning they were in uncharted territory and had no experienced members to guide them through it. If you're thinking that BiS begins navigating this path with a new, highly qualified leader, then you'd be in the right mind. But remember, Jinosuke Watanabe is the one in charge of this operation. Nothing's ever as simple as it could be with this dude. He decided to enact a system that would alter the way BiS operated. It was intended to keep the group fresh by literally mixing things up. It gave fans the opportunity to make their voices heard, and most importantly, it was gonna make WAK a fortune. This system was dubbed BiS League.
せーの、新生アイドル研究会 BiS です。よろしくお願いします。
On March 12th, the WAK Audition Camp 2018 officially kicked off. The purpose of the camp was to find new members for every group signed to WAK. BiS, BiS, Gang Parade, and the recently debuted Empire, who I'm sure were the focus of the camp. But all eyes would be on BiS at its end. The audition lasted for 6 days, and it included everything you'd expect from a WAK audition. Singing, dancing, interviews, marathons, a cook-off, a squatting competition, essay writing. I'd honestly love to audition for WAK just to see if I could survive. 24 auditionees walked in, but only 9 new idols emerged on the other side. On the 19th, the 2018 WAK exhibition was held, and it was there that the finalists found out which groups they'd be joining. Remember how I said all eyes were on BiS at the audition's end? Well, of the 9 new signees, 5 of them went to BiS, bringing the group's total up to 11. On top of that, it was announced that a member of Empire would be permanently transferred to BiS, so now we're looking at 12 members, which is just... my word. 11 was already too many, but now 12? Such an ambitious feat had never been attempted by another idol group before. Who in their right mind would manage a unit of such magnitude? Luckily for Watanabe, they now had a nice even 12 members, which helped provide a unique solution to this unique problem. That same day, it was announced that BiS would be divided into 2 groups called, and I need you to remember, Watanabe Artistic Creative Corporation. They were called BiS First and BiS Second. That's not a joke, those were actually their names. BiS First would consist of Godzilla, Pan Luna Leafy, Momoland, and new members Nel Nedu, Toriya's Hana, and another finalist known only as Saki Gamiya. BiS Second would be Kika Frontail, Aya 8 Prince, Perry Ubu, and new members Muro Panako, Mew Club, and Yuina Empire, who'd been transferred because, according to Watanabe, her voice didn't fit in with Empire, even though she was a founding member of the group. It was also announced that the first single from both groups, Don't Miss It, would be released in July, though the split and debut of the new members wouldn't happen until the beginning of the single's promotional tour in June. All joking aside, this sort of tactic isn't uncommon for both commercially and literally huge idol groups. Sister groups and subgroups will be formed for a variety of reasons, like giving a member a chance to lead their own unit, allowing for some musical experimentation, or to... Who am I kidding? It's almost always done for some dala dala. And that was pretty much the sole reason for the BiS split. This was evidenced when Don't Miss It was announced to have 3 versions. BiS First would release 2 versions of the single, one with a CD of the song and a Blu-ray of Poor Louie's graduation concert, the other with the CD and a DVD of the concert, while BiS Second would just release a CD-only version. So from the beginning, it was made clear that BiS Second was intended to be BiS First's sister group. Following the audition camp, BiS went about business as normal, preparing for another new chapter in their history. Until Momoland disappeared. On April 18th, they were set to perform at Koenji High in Tokyo, and Momoland was nowhere to be found. She no-showed the pre-show meeting, didn't respond to anybody's texts or calls, and the only evidence they had that she was okay was a text that simply read, "I'm not going today." There were also reports on Twitter that a fan spotted her boarding a plane. The show that night went on with just 5 members. 2 days passed without a public appearance by Momoland, and these reports of her at an airport had everybody pretty worried. Thankfully, but also sadly, a statement of Momoland's withdrawal from BiS due to fatigue was posted to the group's website. She was okay, but no longer a member of BiS. That same day, April 20th, she also posted a statement to Twitter, apologizing to fans, but also thanking both them and the WAK staff for supporting her through this decision and in her time in BiS. A very scary situation that turned out okay, thankfully, but this wouldn't be the only loss the group would endure. Technically. On April 26th, not even a week after Momoland's withdrawal, it was announced that Saki Gamiya had withdrawn from BiS due to personal reasons. I say technically because Toria's Hana would later reveal that she'd actually withdrawn from BiS 2 days after joining. Not sure why this was announced almost 2 months later, but it was. And now BiS was presented with yet another dilemma. Their split was less than 2 months away, and these withdrawals meant that the groups would be unbalanced, with BiS First down to just 4 members. Thankfully, this problem could be solved by moving literally any BiS Second member to BiS First. But Watanabe, once again, had another stroke of genius. This time though, he was onto something even if it was poorly explained and hard to understand. He decided that the fans would be the ones to balance the group out through a voting system similar to the 2017 WAK general election. Fans who purchase the debut BiS First and/or BiS Second single would be allowed to vote for their favorite member. The 5 highest voted members would make up BiS First, and the remaining 5 would be placed into BiS Second. Simple enough, right? Well, Watanabe isn't a man of simplicity. Voting wasn't intended to be a one-time thing. It would be held in between the release of every BiS First and BiS Second single, meaning that the lineups could potentially change with every release. Thus, BiS League was born, and the polls officially opened on July 3rd. A lot was riding on this election, so it was important that fans cast their ballots. But how exactly was voting done? Included in every physical copy of both groups' singles was a code that allowed fans to vote once on the BiS League site. This method of voting helped ensure that the election stayed fair, because really, what numbskull is going to buy multiple copies of the same single? Honestly, the system was put in place to further drive sales, and to Watanabe's credit, there's no better way to sell some CDs than by letting fans feel like they're directly supporting their favorite idol. So, a day after voting began, 2 versions of Don't Miss It dropped with the 4- and 6-person lineups. Musically and lyrically, both renditions are exactly the same, but the music videos and vocals put a chasm between the groups. That's probably the distance WAK wanted in between them anyways. BiS First was supposed to be the premier BiS unit, their logo resembling an intricate royal crest, whereas being a part of BiS Second was supposed to be seen as punishment, their group looking like it was made in the Black Ops 2... Scratch that. Black Ops emblem maker. The BiS First video saw them headbanging and performing in a vibrant street market full of life and color, whereas the BiS Second video saw them dancing around a junkyard. The presentation was enough to differentiate the 2 groups as well as tell which one WAK had put their stock in. The fans, however, were investing differently. Almost right away, BiS Second was the fan favorite, largely in part because of the character that women like Kika, Perry Ubu, and Aya finally got to reveal to the world. It's already difficult to shine in such a large group, but when you throw poor Louie and Saki Kamiya in the mix, it's easy to be drowned out by such established figures. This time though, they weren't just shining brightly. They were the stars of BiS League. And as great as that is, they were looking to ascend to BiS First. But on July 9th, shortly after voting began, Watanabe announced that both groups would retain the current number of members, meaning that BiS First would permanently have 4 members and BiS Second 6. At least he didn't announce it after votes were tallied for the day. Now that there was one less BiS First spot, the competition ramped up, with some of the ladies hitting the campaign trail. While most election campaigns involve signs and radio or TV ads, the BiS League campaigns took on more interesting forms. Mew Club dyed her hair, Kika live-streamed an attempt at 10,000 squats, and Aya ran a solo 100-kilometer marathon. She actually finished the entire thing, and in mid-July nonetheless, but garnered the ire from some of her groupmates, with Muro Panako calling her stupid for attempting a marathon in the middle of summer. Oh, and Aya also dyed her hair. While the struggle for BiS First placement was intense for some, a few members didn't really seem to care. For example, Muro Panako and Yuina Empire just kind of went about their business. Like, they received votes, but they didn't go out of their way to sway fans. I'd probably have voted for them just because of that alone. The polls closed on July 26th, and the results of the first voting period were announced 4 days later, which shows that WAK meticulously counted every vote to ensure a fair and honest result. That's probably not true. Anyways, the results were shocking, because there was only one change for both groups. In the order they ranked, BiS first consisted of Godzilla, Aya 8 Prince, Pan Luna Leafy, and Toriez Hana, while BiS second was Kika Frontail, Perry Ubu, Yuina Empire, Muro Panako, Nel Nedu, and Mew Club. It appears that Aya's marathon and new hair paid off, whereas Mew Club's had the opposite effect. Regardless, when it came to BiS first, Aya was in, and Nel Nedu was out. One interesting thing about BiS first is that Hana was the only newer member of the group, which surprised a lot of people, mostly because the original members had stronger followings. But they didn't have rich followings. Apparently, Hana stayed in BiS first because a bunch of rich fans all came together, bought copies of Don't Miss It in mass, and just flooded the site with votes for her. By the end of the July voting period, she had 6,411 votes, which was just enough to keep her spot in BiS first. Looking at the figures is kind of funny too, because you gradually see her increase by a few hundred at first, but as it comes down to the wire, her numbers shoot up by over 500 every tally, which is just hilarious. On August 1st, the captains for both units were announced. Godzilla would take the helm for BiS first, and Muro Panako would captain BiS second. And these new units would perform their first live shows at the 2018 Tokyo Idol Festival. Of course, this was the first show that featured the new lineup, so you know they went all out for the Tokyo Idol Fest. Both groups only performed 2 songs. BiS first got a 6-song set list, which they used to play BiS BiS 5 times and cover Gang Parade's Plastic 2 Mercy. BiS second only got to play 4 songs, and they used their time to play BiS BiS 3 times and cover Gang 2, another Gang Parade song, as the grand finale. What better way to promote your new acts than by having them perform somebody else's song? After such groundbreaking debut performances, both groups would just fill the next few months by performing live shows. After a pretty uneventful 2 months, the music videos for the next single, Against the Pain, were released on October 8th. Once more, the songs were exactly the same aside from the vocals and videos, and once more, BiS first was treated like royalty. Their music video sees them dancing on a beach, but fully dressed, unlike some other BiS beach videos. Anyways, they fling their shoes around some, run along the beach, there's a strong focus on some message in a bottle and a couch. There's a really weird shot of Aya for like a few frames. I don't understand art, but much like Don't Miss It, BiS first had a very nice presentation, complete with gorgeous scenery, wonderful effects, and some nice cinematography. Now, BiS second, on the other hand, their video opens with them getting hit by a truck, just straight out of the gate, no holds barred. Their lives flash before their eyes as we're shown pictures of each member throughout their lifetimes. But miraculously, the impact and subsequent fall were not enough to take them out, because at the end of the video, they chased down and hijacked the truck, the badasses. There are also some cool references to their auditions, as everybody's wearing the clothing they were in when they officially joined BiS, and Perry Ubu even downs a spoonful of ghost pepper curry. The idea of BiS first being the main group was made very clear again, but the numbers speak for themselves. At the time of recording, the BiS second video has more than double the views the BiS first video has, and, at least in my opinion, the BiS second version is better anyways. And the views alone show that BiS League was not going the way Watanabe had intended it to. Luckily, the time to fix it came on November 12th, the day the polls opened for round 2 of voting. Both versions of Against the Pain officially dropped 2 days later, with BiS first getting 3 different releases, and BiS second getting a basic single CD release. Among other things, the perfect edition of the BiS First release came with 4 extra CDs of each member performing a solo version of Against the Pain. It was a nice way to reward the BiS First members for all of their hard work and dedication, but it was also a way to incentivize the BiS Second members to work harder, rack up more votes, and, most importantly, sell more singles. A few days into the November voting period, Perry Ubu rocketed up to first place thanks to her appearance in a fashion show. Aside from managing WAK and all of its idols, Watanabe runs a fashion brand called Neglect Adult Patience. And I'm to the point where I just accept things like this now. Its first runway show was on October 16th, 2018, and it featured various WAK idols as models. Perry Ubu was one of them, but her runway walk stood out from the rest because she ate noodles the entire time she was on stage. Apparently, fans went bananas for this, resulting in her 22 days atop the BiS League charts. Obviously, first place is a pretty sweet position to be in, but it also became the safest. On December 9th, Watanabe tweeted out that he was considering removing the low-ranking members from BiS. I think it's scientifically proven that threatening somebody's job actually makes them work harder. Oh, I'm wrong? We'll actually see that this is, in fact, not the case soon. On December 18th, both units ran a relay marathon in response to increased BiS League CD sales. Everyone had 45 minutes to complete 45 kilometers, and the entire marathon had to be finished by 9 p.m. At some point during her relay, Toria's Hana broke down in tears because she wasn't doing so well in the marathon or in BiS League. In fact, she was in last place. She apparently wasn't too popular with fans who made fun of her for talking too much during her audition, and it seems like everything had just gotten to her in that moment, though she was comforted by some of her groupmates. Hana wasn't the only one that struggled with the marathon though. They failed to complete the run by 9 p.m., so Watanabe made them run another 100 kilometers as punishment. Everyone except for Toria's Hana and Mew Club participated, as they were underage and couldn't legally work after 9 p.m. But shortly after it began, the very stable individual called it off because he'd grown bored of marathons. Some people really just don't need to have power. A few weeks later, on the 27th, the polls officially closed on the second round of BiS League voting. The results were announced on the 29th, the final date of their I Don't Know What Will Happen tour, and Watanabe made an entire ordeal out of it. He brought an official presenter on stage, they both gave little speeches, and then they called every member of both BiS units out on stage. Their fates were to be announced in front of a live audience. Once everyone found out how many votes they'd accumulated, which spot they claimed, and which BiS they'd be in, they all gave short speeches basically thanking the fans for voting, though most of them fought back tears. And after these emotional, heartfelt speeches, it was all rendered meaningless. Once everybody found out which BiS they'd be in, Watanabe announced that the BiS League system was abolished and that all 10 members would perform on the next single together. This meant that the stunts pulled, tears shed, and all the hard work the ladies put in ultimately meant nothing, and all the codes and singles purchased by fans were basically a waste of money. In case you're curious, the election results were as follows, from 10th place to 1st. Toria's Hana, Muro Panako, Yuina Empire, Nel Nedu, Mew Club, and Pan Luna Leafy in BiS Second, and Perry Ubu, Kika Front Frontail, Aya 8 Prince, and Godzilla in BiS First. There was actually an audible gasp when Pan Luna Leafy was announced for BiS Second.
パンルナリーフィーさんです。おめでとうございます。
And I'd also like to point out how pissed Kika, who busted her ass to get into BiS First in both elections, was when Watanabe announced that BiS League was ending. She just hunched over and stared right at him, which I just love. Why BiS League ended is unclear though. Watanabe never provided a reason why, and while it's most likely because it became too strenuous for the WAK staff and simply wasn't working out the way they wanted it to, I like to imagine that Watanabe himself got too confused and frustrated with the entire system and just called an end to it. That sounds about right for him anyways. But just because the league had come to an end didn't mean BiS were freed from it. The after effects of the election were in full force that night, as Watanabe made good on his consideration. Immediately after announcing BiS League's abolishment, he singled out half the group as unfit to continue performing, and announced that their fates would be decided based on the sales of the next single. So, who was deemed unfit? Well, as you'd expect, they were the lowest ranking members of the final election period. Toria's Hana, Uena Empire, Moto Panako, Nel Nedu, and Aya 8 Prince. And now, we're finally gonna talk about all that stuff I told you to remember regarding Aya. Flashing back to 2017, Aya opened up and said she hated being a member of BiS. She claimed that the group's staff, Watanabe included, would often make rude remarks towards her, and poor Louis called her stupid. A lot. Sometimes even on stage. Why there was so much disdain against her is anyone's guess. From what I could tell, there didn't seem to be any ego or attitude issues on Aya's end, and upon returning to BiS, she had improved tenfold as an idol. She's an extremely talented vocalist, participated in everything Watanabe ordered them to do, and fans were head over heels for her, even dubbing her the beauty member of the group. So this unexpected announcement shocked fans and was only made because of some mysterious grudge against her. Unfortunately for Aya, this grudge would later impact her in an even bigger way. So after this final announcement, Watanabe left the stage to an arena of complete silence. Every member of BiS was either in tears, fighting them back, or just in confused shock, trying to make sense of what just happened and figure out what came next. Godzilla then grabbed a mic to say what I think were words of encouragement to the audience and her groupmates. Then, after one final bow, they waved goodbye to the fans, essentially waving goodbye to 2018 as well. The name of the tour probably sums up how every single individual involved with the group, fans and all, felt at the show's conclusion. By the end of 2018, nobody knew what was going to happen to the unfit members or the group as a whole. No one except Jinosuke Watanabe, and good luck trying to guess what he was thinking. Just when BiS had finally gotten back on track following poor Louis' exit and now BiS League, they were once again derailed by this ominous announcement. And can you really blame anyone if they wanted to call it quits here? That brings us to New Year's Day 2019. The day Nel Nedu quit. A post on BiS website cited physical and mental exhaustion as the reasons for her exit, but I'd place emphasis on mental exhaustion. BiS League put a major strain on everyone involved as the entire system was based on popular votes. For some, being voted into BiS second must have made them feel like no matter how hard they worked, they simply weren't good enough or just weren't likable. For example, Moto Panako and Uena Empire, two women who didn't seem to care about earning votes and who'd both been in BiS second since day one, had to work especially hard to hold back their tears on the 29th. Now imagine how Nel Nedu felt. She was initially placed into BiS first, then voted down to BiS second, and remained there in the final election. Now her job was on the line, simply because not enough people liked her. Can you blame her for wanting out? It's almost like determining someone's worth based on how much people like them isn't a good idea. With Nedu's exit, BiS was now down to 9 members, with only 4 of them being labeled unfit. The Ennead, or Group of Nine, there's your word of the day, began promoting their next single, which was revealed to be called Are You Ready? At the end of January. It was also announced as a tribute to, and I hope you're ready for this one, Freddie Mercury and Bohemian Rhapsody. Of course it wasn't dedicated to any past BiS member who put their health on the line time and time again. Don't be ridiculous. Its 11-minute 24-second runtime is an homage to Mercury's November 24th death date. The entire song would officially debut on Kenta Matsukuma's radio show Scramble Rock City on February 23rd. That same day, it was also announced as the 5th ending theme for Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, so this single started picking up steam quickly, which was awesome for the unfit members. And it seemed like it continued to do so, as on March 1st, the BiS Twitter account teased that something special was coming that evening. That something was a brand new music video. Just not for Are You Ready? Instead, it was the single's B-side, a familiar track called BiS. This version is practically identical to Poor Louie's 2016 release, down to the instrumentals and the video setting. The only real difference is that the 2019 version, as it was dubbed, featured all 9 BiS members. Hoping that would be enough to satiate fans' cravings for new BiS, Watanabe set his sights on March 20th. Are You Ready was set for release that day, and while searching for a way to grab headlines, and of course that sweet dollar, he hatched another ingenious idea. On March 4th, Empire held a 24-hour farewell show for a graduating member, and he felt like the same concept could work with BiS. But seeing how the song's 11.5 minutes long, a mere 24 hours would not be enough. He then hopped on Twitter to announce his breakthrough revolution, Are You Ready? To 69 Hour, a 69-hour-long festival to celebrate the single's release. While nearly 3 straight days of performing doesn't sound uncharacteristic for Watanabe, this idea wasn't as cruel as past BiS stunts. The festival will be spread across 5 days, from March 18th to the 22nd, and in those 69 hours, BiS would perform at 5 different venues, interact with fans, sell merch, and even sleep on stage with fans sleeping in front of it. Hopefully nobody snored. Or sleepwalked. 2 days into this non-stop party, Are You Ready's music video was released. The song changes genres about 4 times, and the video follows suit, though it was an interesting and enjoyable watch for me. Oh, and the Bohemian Rhapsody tribute is made in the song's beginning and its end. If you feel like you'll get burnt out on it, there are actually ad breaks throughout the video on YouTube, so you'll get some reprieve in between genre shifts. And you wouldn't be alone in thinking that, as some had their doubts about the song's replayability, live performance, and commercial success on account of its length. If the 69-hour extravaganza was any measuring stick though, then BiS had no reason to worry about performing it live. Are You Ready was debuted live at the event, and performed multiple times afterwards, and fans seemed to eat all 11 minutes up. And the Oricon charts proved that the group didn't have to worry about its commercial success either. The song shattered all previous BiS records, coming in at number 2 on the March 18th weekly chart. Are You Ready left Die and its number 6 spot in the dust, so this must have meant that the unfit members were saved, right? Well, Watanabe is a man of his word, so of course they weren't. On March 22nd, Aya, Hana, Moro Panako, and Yuina were all sent to the 2019 WAK Audition camp, not knowing what was in store for them. It seems like Oricon didn't release the March 18th chart until April 1st, though I doubt it would have mattered. Watanabe had a goal with the unfit members, one that he'd do whatever it took to see through. The camp began on March 24th, but the BiS members didn't arrive until the afternoon of the 26th. Upon arrival, Watanabe made his intentions for them very clear. He stated that any BiS member eliminated from the audition would be fired from the group. While every auditionee was trying to join WAK, the unfit ladies were fighting for survival. And even though they didn't know it, a lot more than their jobs were on the line. Day 3 ended with the WAK members and auditionees being shuffled into teams for dance rehearsal and a general knowledge quiz on WAK. The next day kicked off with a 6:30 morning marathon, followed by breakfast and more dance rehearsal. Afterwards, the teams were reshuffled once more, and each one was tasked with creating an original choreography for WAK as Fuck by Shuffle Unit Saint Sex. They'd practice for a little while before everyone broke for lunch. Everyone except Watanabe, who only feeds on the tears of idols and their fans. He'd spend his lunch break concocting a scheme that was guaranteed to get them both. So when everyone came back from lunch, he reshuffled the teams once again, this time making sure that each one was led by a BiS member. He then told them that the lowest ranking BiS-led team would be eliminated from the audition. Now that everyone was basically starting from scratch, the pressure was really on. At 6 p.m., each team performed their WAK as Fuck choreography, and a little bit later, the judges returned with their verdicts. They announced that Team Aya came in last place, meaning that her entire team had been eliminated from the audition, and Aya 8 Prince had been fired from BiS. Based on the final BiS League results, she didn't even belong there anyways, but her firing sent everyone watching into a frenzy. But as weird as it may seem, Aya wasn't technically out of BiS yet. Another part of WAK auditions that are seemingly done to entertain viewers are redemption challenges. These challenges take place before every morning marathon and basically give an eliminated auditionee a chance to earn their spot back. While they are totally random, they're announced the night before, giving participants time to prepare. For example, some of the redemption challenges at the 2019 audition included making Watanabe laugh within 15 seconds and reciting the most digits of pi. And Aya's redemption challenge was simply winning a 5:30 a.m. marathon. Of course, she placed first, no problem. After all, this is a woman who completed a 100-kilometer marathon in the middle of summer, so taking the gold was a cakewalk. But she didn't win. Apparently, she was supposed to eat a melon pan at the halfway point, but just kinda shoved it in her mouth and kept going. She didn't actually eat it until she was close to the finish line, which rendered her first place spot meaningless. Because of something so insignificant, Aya 8 Prince remained eliminated from the audition and fired from BiS. Unfortunately, the fourth day wouldn't get any easier for BiS fans either. The teams were reshuffled and tasked with performing another song on the previous day following Aya's elimination, with Toria's Hana being the only BiS team leader. They spent some time rehearsing and eventually performed their assigned songs at 6, with Team Hana coming in last place. Of course, this meant that Toria's Hana was down, but not completely out. Despite this, she still lost it and had cameras shoved in her face to broadcast her raw emotions to the entire world. Her redemption challenge was doing the most sit-ups to Paprika the next morning. She failed to beat the other auditionees, coming in third place with 50 sit-ups and remained eliminated from the audition and fired from BiS. Fans were once again pissed at Watanabe. Not only was he firing people who didn't deserve this kind of treatment, but he was exploiting their raw emotions, which disgusted a lot of viewers who looked up to these women. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? The remainder of the audition wouldn't see anybody else fired from the group, though cameras surrounded Yuina Empire after she won the Day 7 marathon, then collapsed in tears. Of course, this drew even more ire from spectators across the internet. But outside of the two new WAK idols, I think the exploitative nature of the entire livestream and the BiS firings were really the only talking points of the whole camp. And you can bet that the other 5 BiS members were intently following along. That brings us to the camp's final day. As usual, the WAK Exhibition 2019 was set to go down, and BiS were supposed to debut their new lineup of 7 members at the show. But sometime beforehand, they all got together and just mulled over the events of the audition. They looked back at what had been done to Aya and Hana, talked about how it made them feel, pretty much reflected on the past year or so and said, fuck this. Everyone unanimously agreed that they'd rather disband than continue performing with just 7 members. And that's what they intended to do. The exact reason why they made this decision is really unknown, though it's widely thought that this was their response to the mistreatment of the unfit members, specifically Hana and Aya. They basically unionized in support of their wrongfully terminated groupmates. While that's most likely the actual reason, another popular theory is that this was their revenge against Watanabe for, well, you know, everything. The news was officially broken during their exhibition performance. There, they announced that their last show would be on the final date of their Are You Ready to Go tour, May 11th at Mainavi Blitz Akasaka in Tokyo. Since they were disbanding anyways, Aya and Hana were allowed to continue performing with BiS despite technically not being members. What sounds like an uncharacteristic act of kindness from Watanabe would be counteracted not much later. But more on that in a bit. Fans were, above all else, confused and angered by the announcement. The sudden nature of it combined with the murky details didn't sit well with most, and there was only one person everybody was blaming: Jinosuke Watanabe. Even though we don't have a specific reason, it's obvious that the 2019 audition camp played a significant role in their decision, but it's difficult to say that everything in 2018 didn't factor in too. In spite of this, everybody continued to support BiS when they kicked off the Are You Ready to Go tour on April 6th. Thankfully, the 10 shows leading up to May 11th were uneventful, but I think everybody was just mutually done with each other by this point. Plus, there was no point in attempting to pull any further stunts with this lineup as they were all on their way out. Even though that was the case, this tour was treated like any other old BiS tour. No special stages, pyrotechnics, or dancing mascots were anywhere to be found, and the same held true for the May 11th show. Mainavi Blitz was no Nippon Budokan, and nothing was really done to accent this show as their last. Still, that didn't stop BiS from tearing the house down. They'd play a modest 26-song setlist featuring only songs from Re Stupid onward to remind fans one last time that BiS was their group. Following the main show, everyone gave a short speech telling the fans how much BiS meant to them, how much they loved being in the group, how much they loved each other, and of course, thanking them for 3 years of undying support. To really milk the emotion and let everybody drink in the sheer talent within this group one last time, they performed Are You Ready as an encore. The song's choreography actually has them waving goodbye at its end, which was really fitting because that was it. The group's last single, their 11.5-minute epic, was the final song they'd perform. With that encore, their final show came to a close, meaning that brand new Idol Society's second generation had officially come to an end. Now that the fun ended, it was time to get down to business. Watanabe walked out in a suit from a 1930s gangster costume to inform fans of the now former BiS members' futures in WAK. Kika Frontail and Godzilla would be leaving the company immediately. Pan Luna Leafy, Yuina Empire, and Muro Panako would remain in the company. And Mew Club, Toriya's Hana, Perry Ubu, and Aya 8 Prince would remain in the company as free agents, which was an official way of saying they'd basically ride out their contracts until the end of the month. Aya actually pulled the biggest power move I've ever seen and just straight up told fans that she'd be leaving WAK and would be using her remaining weeks under contract to seek employment elsewhere. It's a shame they didn't call her Chad 8 Prince. It really sucks that they went out like this. It was clear that BiS meant a lot to each and every one of them, which was all the more special because they'd reinvented the group that reinvented Idol. Seeing them disband under these circumstances and on such short notice had to have hurt, though I think watching them continue on as an unhappy 7-woman unit would have been all the more painful. I think this was the right call though. Regardless of what Watanabe or any of the other BiS staff thought, everyone was crucial to the group's second generation. This lineup introduced us to a bunch of extremely talented people. So the only question that remained was, what's next?
以上 BiS でした。ありがとうございました。
A few years removed from their disbandment, the ladies of BiS second generation have either taken different career paths or pleasant roads in life. So now, let's catch up with everyone and see how they're doing these days. I covered poor Louie in my last BiS video, but here's a quick summary of her career post-BiS. BiS YouTuber, Billy Idol disbands, Felty World Art Show, Vlog YouTube channel, Solo Music YouTube channel, Mina no Poor Louie 2, founding of Poor Land record label, where she now performs with idol group Pigs. The same goes for Saki Kamiya, so here's another quick summary. Continue performing with Gang Parade until her graduation from the group, WAK, and Idol. From there, she began a choreography career working closely with Pigs and other groups. Momoland left entertainment after leaving BiS, which is no surprise considering that she's quiet, looked really nervous all the time, and reportedly cried on stage a lot. Throughout 2019, she would remain hidden from the spotlight, though it would find her once more in 2020. On the June 18th edition of News Every, she was seen working at a Medaka shop alongside her mother and was credited in the report as Momoka-san. So it looks like she's enjoying a quiet life alongside her mother these days. I also want to point out that while in BiS, her mom opened a Twitter account where she would constantly tweet about how awesome her daughter is. And that's the most wholesome thing to come out of this story. Saki Gamiya opened a Twitter account under the name You in July of 2019, where she announced that she'd be entering that year's Miss ID, a beauty pageant. She'd go on to win the There Are More Important Things to Us Than Our Gender award. In late July, she changed her name on Twitter back to the name she went by before joining BiS, Yuki. Then in August, she appeared in electronic unit Haneda System's Invisible Movie music video. Yuki actually said she left BiS due to anxiety, depression, and an eating disorder, but over on her Instagram she could be seen posting selfies, creating art, and just generally enjoying life, which is wonderful considering her past struggles. Hey everyone, it's just me with a quick update regarding Yuki. So on March 1st, she was revealed as one of idol group Sui Sui's 3 new members. Along with this debut came another name change for her, though it was more of an extension. Now known as Shiraku Yuki, her debut performance with Sui Sui was held on March 13th, and her first single with the group, Kanjo Kaiho Sensen, was released the following day. It's awesome to see her giving Idol another shot, but it's even better to see her continuing to pursue her dreams and enjoying life. Nedu followed a path similar to Momoland in that she left entertainment and completely vanished. Since leaving BiS, she hasn't been publicly seen and nobody really knows where she is or what she's up to. But before joining the group, she cosplayed under the name Nedu, hence her stage name. Some have speculated she's returned to cosplaying somewhere on the down low. But like I said, it's really unknown what she's up to these days. After a short break from entertainment, Kika Frontier would re-emerge on July 5th, 2019, where she announced that she'd be opening Kika's Bar, which is, no prizes for guessing, it's a pharmacy. It's a bar. The grand opening went down on October 8th, and that was followed by the release of Kika's Beer, her own beer brand, on the 19th. She'd set up pop-up bars at WAK events but strictly served drinks, as her entertainment days were behind her. Then, in June 2020, she was a subject of photographer Usami Ryo's third Cute But Psycho exhibition. The photo shoot really came at a great time too, because on June 24th, Kika announced that Kika's Bar would be permanently closing due to
current global circumstances.
Heartbreaking news for a fan favorite BiS member, but I'm sure that whatever someone as talented and charismatic as her does next will be a fruitful venture. And best of all, no face paint. Godzilla retired from Idol shortly after leaving WAK. She'd then begin appearing in Poor Louie's vlogs from July to August 2019, and that was really the last time fans would see her. Until August 1st, 2020, when she opened an Instagram account under the name Ayana and was announced as a representative for the Stingray fashion brand. During one of their live streams, she revealed that she'd gotten married and had a daughter in April of 2020. From the aforementioned Instagram account, she seems to be enjoying her new career path and her life as a mother, which really just warms the heart, doesn't it? Pan Luna Leafy joined another WAK idol group called Carry Loose. Their first digital single, Yasashi Sekai, was released on September 18th, 2019, and that was followed by their self-titled debut album a month later. Their first official single, Ningen, dropped in February 2020. And that was it. Watanabe felt like everybody in the group didn't work well in Carry Loose and they just disbanded in Halloween of 2020. Pan Luna Leafy terminated her WAK contract following this and announced that she'd be continuing her career in entertainment as a freelancer for the time being. Think she does birthday parties? Asking for a friend. I'm back again because everyone keeps moving and it's just hard to keep up with and I'm just doing my best, alright? Unfortunately, I don't think Pan Luna Leafy will be able to play my friend's birthday party. Why? Well, because on April 17th, it was revealed that a producer had taken her up on her freelance offer, announcing Pan Luna Leafy as the first member of their new idol group. Thankfully, I think she'll be in good hands, because this producer is none other than Rina Yokoyama. The group will be produced under her Ichigo Rinahamu alias, and auditions for additional members opened the same day. But that's really all the info we have at the moment. I'm sure the group will bang, unlike my birthday my friend's birthday party. Think he could be busy? Asking for the same friend. Yuina Empire literally followed Pan Luna Leafy as she too joined Carry Loose alongside her fellow BiS alum. However, they'd part ways following the group's disbandment as Yuina would remain with WAK. But on December 26th, it was announced that she, a WAK veteran, would be joining WAK Egg or WAG, the company's trainee group, whose purpose is to prepare young signees for their eventual debut. Why she's there, I don't know, but her debut show with the group was on January 3rd, 2021. Muro Panako terminated her WAK contract on June 24th, then opened a new Twitter account under her real name, Hanako. It's believed she changed her mind about staying in WAK because she was the only BiS alum who didn't receive an invite to join Carry Loose. In March 2020, she proved she didn't need WAK or Carry Loose, thank God, because she announced that she'd be starting her own music project called Her Knuckle, whom she still performs with to this day. The music video for their debut single, Lemon Hata no Kyoryu, dropped 2 days after the announcement. Okay, last time, I swear. Right, so that whom she still performs with to this day part is now BS at the time of recording this, because Her Knuckle announced their breakup on June 3rd, tweeting this out, before posting the full-sized image to, mess with everyone, I guess. I'm gonna level with you here and say that my Japanese isn't the best, so I'm not certain what this image even really says, but I do know that Hanako stated that she'd continue working as a soloist. And I'm glad that my personal favorite BiS member and the drip queen, Hanako, will continue to grace the music world with her talent and fashion. I mean, just peep the fits. Yeah, I'm hip. On July 31st, Mew Club signed with Dear Stage, another idol agency, under whom she'd form a sister group to Denpagumi Inc. called Meme Tokyo. Upon their formation, she changed her name to Mew, and their first single was a Denpagumi Inc. cover called Den Den Passion, released on October 11th, 2019. On Christmas Eve, their debut single, Melancholic Circus, would follow. June 21st, 2020 would see her announce the formation of Hirune Tohiko, a rock band she'd be the vocalist of. Their first performance video dropped the same day, and their first digital single, Float, was released on December 18th. Toria's Hana followed Mew, signing with Dear Stage on July 21st. She also underwent a name change, becoming Hanamiya Hana, and would enter the Arcana Challenge, a contest to find Annie-song singers or singers for anime intros and outros. I didn't know it was an actual genre. She, along with 5 other winners, formed Arcana Project, whose debut single, Ace of Wands, was released on March 25th, 2020. Outside of Idol, she debuted on the silver screen in late 2019, starring in the thriller Find. Perry Ubu followed in the footsteps of Saki Kamiya, choreographing the debut single for idol group Melissa in June 2019. The next month, she held the Nostalgic Photo Exhibition, which was followed by her debut with Wave, a talent agency under Avex and TWH. Her first solo songs were released on her SoundCloud account, and her debut solo show, Born Again, was held on October 5th. She'd continued to release digital singles throughout 2020 and even held a 12-hour live-streamed show where she walked around Tokyo selling CDs and merch. Looks like those marathons and long audition camps didn't go to waste, huh? Aya 8 Prince would briefly step away from music, making her acting debut in Chikai Yude Toket, a drama series uploaded exclusively to Twitter. Her return to music was at her debut solo show, which was held on November 6th, 2019, where she also debuted a new track. She also went on to perform at the highly anticipated, critically acclaimed, Felty World. So it seems like she and poor Louie have made up after calling her, stupid. 2020 would see her release 2 photo books in January, upload some demo tracks to her SoundCloud account, and release her first digital single, Punk Ska Ska Paradise / Otsukara-sama Rhapsody, on April 15th. She'd also announce a solo album, which has unfortunately been delayed due to
current global circumstances.
In August, she opened a YouTube channel where she announced that she'd be completing her album via crowdfunding, and almost immediately, her campaign reached its goal. So people are really excited for this record. Or maybe they're just excited to see more of Aya. They'd get to see plenty of her in November 2020 though, as she collaborated with lingerie brand Gemini Tail as both a model and performer, releasing a promotional song called Night and Day. Later in the month, she scored another acting gig, starring in the Time Capsule in 5 Years miniseries on the Chiba TV variety show. Her song, Answer, was also used as the show's outro.
はじめまして、私たち新生アイドル研究会 BiS です。
And that's it. That's the story of Brand New Idol Society's second generation. There was no ex-BiS show, no noise band collaborations, no hip-hop feuds, none of that. The difference between both generations of BiS really can't be overstated. And the same goes for the third generation. Of course they reformed, there's no way this can ever end, right? As I mentioned earlier, Watanabe counteracted his kindness with Aya and Hana by announcing that BiS would be reforming. The day of the 2019 exhibition, like minutes after BiS performed. The only stipulations for auditionees were that they be 18 to 28 years old and, quote, understand the true meaning of OG BiS. Nobody knew what that meant, but he clarified it as a willingness to do anything to promote the group. And that's what I think the second generation lacked. A willingness to pull off promotional stunts. Oh. BiS third generation made their debut on June 11th, 2019, exactly 1 month after the second generation disbanded because Watanabe doesn't know how to let things go. At the time of recording, they've released 2 albums, a fan-selected greatest hits record of just their music, lost a few members, and participated in the expected BiS antics, like performing one song for 5 hours straight. This lineup seems to be super popular with fans and Watanabe, but as we've seen, that means nothing. I do think that they'll be together for a while, but all I have to say is that it may make for an interesting part 3 someday. But once the second generation was done, they were done. In the end, I don't think they wanted anything to do with the group at all, but BiS wasn't the problem. I honestly believe they got sick of worrying about what ridiculous stipulation or dangerous stunt may cost them their jobs because Watanabe was on a tear near the end. What his intentions really were, I'm not sure, but it's clear to see that there's no love lost between him and most of the former members. It's just a shame that those 3 years drove some immensely talented people like Kika and Godzilla out of entertainment. However, there's something satisfying about seeing everybody follow their own path, doing what makes them happy, whether that's performing, parenting, or painting. I also find it admirable that they chose to sacrifice BiS, the group they all loved being in so much, to stand with their friends against Watanabe's antics. They may not have left behind a genre-defining legacy, but their names will forever be associated with one of the most unbelievable stories to ever come out of entertainment. Once again, they managed to reinvent the group that reinvented Idol. In the end, they were so much more than a tribute group or a simple cash grab. They were brand new Idol Society. Let me know your thoughts on anything we discussed here in the comments below, as well as your favorite moment from BiS Second Generation's history. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you giving me your time for this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Though it may be a while before then. I've got an audition to prepare for. Guess who's joining BiS 4th Generation, baby?